We're very proud to be holding this event in conjunction with the Albert W. Lewitt Endowed Lecture that was established by Mrs. Benjamin Leon in memory of her brother, who worked on Capitol Hill in the 1940s. And this is a lecture that we hold yearly, and it's usually conducted by either a current or a former member of Congress, a congressional staffer, or an expert on Congress. We're very happy to welcome today Mike Emanuel, who currently serves as chief congressional correspondent for the Fox News Channel. And even more importantly, of course, is the fact that he is a Rutgers alum. So we're so happy to have him.
Thank you.
Are there any communications majors in the house? Okay, all right, so stick with it, and hopefully in the future we'll be having pizza in honor of you here in a few years. Mike received his bachelor's degree in communications from Rutgers University, and he also worked as a play-by-play radio announcer for Rutgers Athletics on WRSU. And the mission of my program, the mission of the Eagleton Institute of Politics, is really to equip and to encourage Rutgers students and young people beyond the Rutgers campus to pay attention to politics, to participate in the political process, and even to be leaders in the world of politics. So one important way we do this is by connecting our students with men and women who exemplify this mission. And certainly our speaker does just that. And so we're really looking forward to hearing his lecture. I know you're all very much looking forward to it also. So please join me in welcoming Mike Emanuel. Thank you so much.
Not bad for a Monday afternoon. Thank you all for coming. It's great to be home. And I mean that sincerely, because as I look back and walk through the halls here, it reminds me of the early stages of my dream, essentially. I remember being a freshman here at Rutgers, arriving on campus and opening the Targum one day, and I saw, WRSU, be on the radio. That sounds pretty cool. And so for the next 4 years, I was on the radio a lot. And that was really my number one activity as an undergraduate here. So being back in the Student Center brings back a lot of wonderful memories. And our teams weren't that good back in those days, but we still had a lot of fun. So it's wonderful to be here, and I am grateful for my Rutgers education, and thankful for the opportunities that have come my way since then. As I mentioned, I did a lot at WRSU, a lot of radio, and I just had this desire to get into the news business. I was the son of political junkies and news junkies, and I found myself attracted to both of those fields, and so my parents thankfully encouraged me to chase my dreams, and so I did a variety of internships, Channel 9 and Secaucus, back when they did news. I was there, and you know, I didn't know anybody in the industry, but I was just determined to try to make it happen some way. And so after an internship there, asking a million questions, they brought me back on a freelance basis to work there, and I got a chance to go to City Hall to fire questions at the mayor, and lots of opportunities where mom and dad would see my hand in the shot, or you know, occasionally hear my voice. And one day the news director at the time, who was kind of an intimidating guy, called me into his office, and I thought, oh man, I must have done something wrong. And he said, I hear your voice on our air a lot. Gulp. Yes, sir. And he said, that's good. That means you're asking the right questions. Okay. He says, if you want to be on the air, and I think you can do it, you got to go to small town America, and then if you want, work your way back. Okay. So he said, when you're out with the camera crews getting elements for a reporter's story, stop and do a little reporter stand-up where you stand there and say, blah, 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 Mike Emanuel, Channel 9 News. And he said, and I'll look at your stuff, and critique it for you, and we'll see what happens. So I did all that. And a few months later, I went in and said, well, I have some news. And he said, what's up? And I said, I got a call from Midland, Odessa, Texas. They're offering me $14,500 a year, and they say I'll get to do everything. So my mom, who worked on Wall Street at the time, was like, Michael, can you live on $14,500 a year? I said, Mom, I don't know, but I'm about to find out. Because I had this kind of ongoing nightmare, if you will, where I kept picturing myself, probably at this age, on my couch in my little house with my white picket fence, watching TV and saying that would have, could have, should have been me, but it's not because I didn't have the guts. So Mom dropped me at Newark Airport and went to Midland, Odessa, Texas, which has since become famous because of Friday Night Lights. It's the place where high school football is king. So I went there, sight unseen, didn't know anybody in the whole state of Texas. My nickname there was Jersey. And they put me through an initiation on a regular basis. They would say, Jersey, go to the Ostrich Festival. Jersey, go to the oil field. Jersey, go to the cotton patch. And in that size market, it's not a question of whether you have a story or not, you've got to come back with something. And so I remember going to the Ostrich Festival, and so I'm from the Northeast. I walk in, I'm like, all right, where's the birds? They're like, oh, they're nasty birds. We don't have any birds here. I'm like, so I'm covering an ostrich festival, and I don't have an ostrich to take video of. This is going to be challenging. So I thinking fast, I got to come back with something. They're testing me. And so I went up to a bunch of people. I'm like, hi, I'm Mike. I'm from New Jersey. What does an ostrich sound like? And I got all these grown people to make ridiculous sounds on camera. So then I went back to the TV station. I said, I've got a story for you. It's not the top story. It's probably more like the end of the show. But anyway, I was tested many times, and thankfully I survived. After a year and a half in Midland, Odessa, then it was on to picturesque Waco, Texas. It was almost 60 markets bigger, and so in the media business, New York's the #1 market, Philadelphia's 4, I think, Chicago's 3, LA's 2, and so I started at market 150. And then I got bumped up to Waco, which was about 50, 60 markets bigger, so I was heading in the right direction. Still not making a lot of money, but I got to anchor weekends, report during the week, and did a little bit of everything, and so I just kept every day trying to improve my skills at everything I was asked to do. Then 10 months and a day later, I counted, I was off to Austin, Texas, to be the weekend anchor and reporter at a local station there. My news director called me in one day and she said, I'm going to have you cover the governor's race. So I thought, touchdown. After going to the Ostrich Festival, the Cotton Patch, the Oil Patch, the governor's race, big state, people care about politics, this is going to be great. Now we had a new 5 o'clock anchor. She got assigned to cover Governor Ann Richards' re-election bid. And then she said to me, I was the weekend anchor, so I was a little lower on the totem pole, and she said, and you're going to cover the challenger. I said, great, I'm covering the governor's race. So the boss told me he would never beat Ann Richards, but it would be good exposure for me. And so I was totally psyched, assigned to cover a big story in a huge state. It was great. So I was one of the first reporters on his campaign bus, and we went all over Texas. Election night, the guy I'm covering won in an upset. His name, George W. Bush. So I covered his first couple of years as governor, then got an offer to go to Los Angeles and do local news there. And so I thought that was the end of the story with Governor Bush. I got a call from a staffer saying, Mike, the governor wants to say goodbye. I go, he punched me in the arm. We're gonna miss you, big guy. Signs a picture of us at a Christmas party to Mike, come home, George W. Bush, and I thought that was it. I go to Los Angeles and I was hating life. I went from being the political correspondent assigned to cover every big political story in Texas when President Clinton came through I'm dating myself, but when President Clinton came through to run for re-election, I was assigned to wherever he would go. When Bob Dole came through, I would go where he would go. And so I was really spoiled at that level because I got to do just about any story I wanted to do. Then I go to Los Angeles and I'm the rookie, I'm the kid, and so it all of a sudden was, oh, this kid suffered a horrendous death. Mike, go out there and cover this terrible crime story. And that's definitely not the reason that I got into the news business. So a lot of LA local news was crime, car chases, and more. And my agent, who I had signed with in Austin, somebody to represent me and be the negotiator so I don't just say yes and take a job without actually finding out what I'm going to make. Well, my agent knew that I really was miserable, and I really thought about getting out of the business, to be honest. He told me to hang in there. So he called one day and said to tell my bosses that I was leaving. I said, well, Larry, I haven't interviewed with anybody. I mean, I interviewed to be the weekend anchor in Waco, Texas. What's the deal? And he said, well, Fox News just launched. They like your material. They need people. They want you. So there I go. I show up my first day of work. I'd never seen the channel. Didn't know much about it other than, you know, they were the people that on the broadcast network had put on The Simpsons and had bought football from CBS. And I thought, all right, well, it's an opportunity. And all along the way, I always seemed to find great opportunities and to try and jump on great opportunities. And so a month later, I was sent to London to cover the awful death of Princess Diana. And that was really kind of a sink or swim moment where it was a huge story. Everybody in America was glued to their sets. And then I came back from that, and I guess I survived. And so then my boss asked, well, where have you worked before? Like then it became kind of the, well, let me get to know this guy. I think he's going to stick around. And I said, well, I worked in Austin, Texas, covered Texas politics. He's like, do you know W? I said, yes. He calls me Mikey. And yeah, I covered him for a couple of years. So he said, can you get an interview with Governor Bush? Because as a new network, you're looking for ins wherever you can find them, something to put you on the radar, put you on the map. And so I pushed hard with his office to ask for interviews with Governor Bush. And after several months, it worked. And so the big executives in New York asked if I would move to Dallas to cover that region of the country and to, when we needed to do a political piece on Governor Bush and his future, then I would be there to do that as well. So I covered his re-election as governor in 1998. I talked my way into his hotel suite as he and the First Lady were watching returns and scored a little exclusive interview there, and then covered much of his 2000 campaign. Then when he finally became president after a tough election, I was asked to go to Washington. So I paid my dues in Washington as well, did a little bit of everything. It's a totally different animal than any place else you would work. And so I did some Supreme Court stories, I did the Pentagon. Obviously, I moved there right before 9/11, and so we had some national security stories, we had some terrorism stories we were talking about at the time, and then I also got to cover the White House, and they would frequently send me back to Crawford, Texas. When he would go back to the ranch, quite often I went with him. So I had the great privilege of spending 4.5 years covering the White House, the final 2 years of President Bush full-time, and then the first 2.5 years of President Obama. Covering the White House is an unbelievable honor, and I mean, I can't tell you how many times I thought about, being the young kid in Midland, Odessa, Texas, and all of a sudden I'm standing in the Oval Office ready to fire a question at the President of the United States and blow my mind. And had the opportunity to travel on Air Force One with both President Bush and President Obama, both domestically and overseas. And I'll tell you, when you're at a presidential news conference, waiting your turn, hoping that you get called on, to hear the President of the United States look down at his notes and and say Mike Emanuel Fox, it's like a jolt of adrenaline all of a sudden. And so I'll tell you, the scariest thing about that experience is making sure whenever he calls on you, you have a question. Because, he can call on you 10th, and you don't want to say, Mr. President, I'm good, I got nothing, That would be the last news conference you'd ever be sent to. And it's his little secret of when he's going to call on you. And so there were times where I got called on 3rd or 4th. There were times I got called on 10th. And so you got your kind of list of different topics you want to hit. And some of my colleagues are really good about, grabbing 2 or 3 topics with one question or with a question and a follow-up. And so it's like, uh-oh, that's off the list and that's off the list. But fortunately, I never came up empty when he called on me, when either president called on me. I had the great privilege to travel overseas with both presidents. They are tremendous work, very little sleep, and obviously a tremendous honor. Then after 4.5 years on the White House beat, my bosses came to me with an idea. They said, in your career path, you did some of the Pentagon, you did some of this and that, you never did Capitol Hill. And so they said, how about we send you over to Capitol Hill, we make you the chief congressional correspondent, you lead the team over there, and we turn you loose over there. And I said, new challenge, another great opportunity, I'm in. Pretty quickly I noticed a contrast between covering the White House and covering the Hill. The White House is obviously great. I mean, stand in the Oval Office, unbelievable. To fly on Air Force One, not bad. And I also had, the opportunity to interview President Bush briefly around the 4th of July one year. I had a chance to interview Vice President Cheney before they left office. I got to ask a lot of questions of President Obama, either in the Oval Office at events that he had or at news conferences. But you don't see those guys roaming the halls when you cover the White House. So it's very kind of compartmentalized, like the press is in the briefing room or beneath the briefing room. There are a lot of walls between you and the president or the vice president. I got to Capitol Hill, and all of a sudden, my first day there, a lot of household names were like, hey, Mike, welcome to the Hill. And you realize that there are 535 of them, plus staffers, who all want to be relevant. And so it was very liberating, if you will, to go to the Hill and to have a lot of people willing to talk freely in the hallway about what's going on. And so then it becomes the challenge of trying to figure out, sources you can trust, building relationships, and also showing them that if they give you something that's really sensitive, that you handle it in a way where you don't burn your source. And so at the Hill, I've had the great opportunity to cover State of the Union addresses, to be at the inauguration on the inside, which is pretty cool to see the president after he's out freezing, taking the oath, to come inside for the luncheon, and he goes walking by us. That's not a bad gig. And, it's been really an amazing opportunity to cover some really big stories over the past 3 years, and I'm really thankful. The Fox News thing, obviously, I told you I was hired without an interview. We were a startup. It was a struggle to explain to folks what we were because we weren't on most cable systems at that point. I remember being on stories, and crews from CBS and the other networks were literally laughing at us, just laughing at the startup with the young kids running around, trying to compete with the big boys, if you will. And then finally, about 12 to 13 years ago, Bill O'Reilly broke through and became a huge hit in cable news. And then a lot of our other shows really caught fire from there. And so for the past more than a decade, we've been the dominant #1 in cable news. And it's funny that a lot of people who initially doubted us are now all applying to work for us. Funny what success will do. So it's been an incredible ride, and I'm really grateful, and just a few final thoughts before we get to Q&A, because I really want to hear what you guys are thinking about. But, you know, my career path took some serious leaps of faith. That's the way I look at it. Moving to Texas, not knowing a soul, you know, do I go or do I stay? Joining Fox News without a job interview, you know, it might not have worked. It might have gone out of business a few months later. And thankfully, those leaps paid off very, very well. So my advice to all of you is dream big and apply maximum effort to getting there. Follow your passion. If you're a political junkie, figure out what you want to do in politics. You love the media, what do you want to do in the media? And then how do you get there? And just be relentless in pursuit of those goals, focused, and just constantly going forward. Look, there are a lot of tough days in my career over the years where things didn't go exactly as planned, but I would just try to tell myself, you know, did I get a little better at, did I ask better questions today? Did I write a little bit of a better script? Did I do my live shot better than I did yesterday? And I would try to look for signs of subtle improvement each day. And so based on what you guys want to do, I would try to do my research, and I would try to anticipate where that industry is heading. You know, I got into Fox News when nobody had seen it. And obviously it's been an unbelievable ride ever since, but where is the industry that you want to be in heading? And if you can find something that seems to be a good idea in that field, and you can get in on the ground floor, well, then the growth potential is phenomenal. And even if a startup doesn't work out, as long as you've gotten great experience, well, then you personally will be marketable the next time around. So I just, you know, want to encourage you. I set my goal after going to market 150. I wanted to make it back to market number 1, to the New York media market. I was hoping Mom and Dad would get a chance to see me on the news every night. I didn't realize that there would be 3 cable news channels at the time, and you know, I basically just tried to follow the good opportunities. I wasn't just like, oh, I'm only going to New York, only going to New York. And you know, bringing your mom or your dad to the White House Christmas party, it's like, what a country, baby. So dream big, go for it, and then work like crazy to get there. Thank you.